CHEK Podcasts.
Hello and welcome to MicCHEK for TV. Today we are talking about the Victoria Skydeck. If you've never heard about the Victoria Skydeck, we're going to tell you about this proposal from 1966. They wanted to build this thing in Victoria's Inner Harbour. Much like the Space Needle, the CN Tower, not as tall as those buildings, but you get the idea. A massive lookout tower, restaurant at the bottom, few other goodies down here, which we'll talk about, a 2-floor lookout observation deck. I think it's a great idea. I still think we should be looking at building something like this today. Sit back, relax, enjoy. This is MicCHEK. 1966-67. Do you know what was happening in Canada around that time? Take a wild guess.
66, 67?
67, to be precise.
Gosh.
That was the celebration of 100 years of our great country.
Oh, okay.
The centennial of Confederation.
We're feeling good 100 years in.
Yeah. So in 1966, when this story begins, people were thinking about what are we going to do for this party, much like we did for the 150th.
That's what I was going to relate it to. Right. Yeah, exactly.
Now, you know that this story is about a Skydeck. That was the pitch, to put a Skydeck in the Inner Harbour. But I think a good place to start this discussion is to ask you, Kyle. Mm-hmm. I want to know a little something about the Kansas City Hall observation deck.
What?
Have you been there?
No.
Okay. Well,
you probably know more about it than I do.
Well,
what's the Kansas City Hall observation deck?
You were really letting me down here.
Dude, what year was this thing built?
I think it was built, I don't know, in the last 2-3 decades.
Is
it City
Hall? Is this
Hall?
The thing that has a restaurant on top of it?
Oh, you're kind of letting me down here. This was my
dude.
big way to get into it, to talk about other observation decks around the world. And I thought to myself, Kansas City's a big city. They must have an observation deck.
I'm pretty sure they do, and I think it's a restaurant that's on top of a giant building. It's like a big 360-degree thing.
It's the 30th floor of City Hall in Kansas City. It's the third tallest building in the city, 443 feet to the top.
Nope.
And what else can I tell you about it? The top floor, a 6-story base. Windows are replaced with... Yeah, I think it's just an observation deck in Kansas City.
Never
been there. Never been
there. Never heard of it.
This is not a good start
not
to
a great
story
start
time.
to wanting to implement this thing.
Where I was hoping we'd go there is you would say, yeah, the observation deck.
Everyone knows the
City.
Observation deck. Yeah. It's beautiful.
Yeah, you can see great lookouts of Kansas City, my hometown. Let's talk about some observation decks and sky decks that people will know. CN Tower, for one. Okay.
Okay. Yep.
Have you been to the CN Tower in Toronto?
Nope. Never been to Toronto.
Calgary has a tower. It's red. A lot of people will know it. It's right downtown. It's called the Calgary Tower. The Vancouver is the Lookout. I don't think it was always called the Vancouver Lookout, but again, it looks much like the Calgary Tower.
Okay.
There's a restaurant up there. It's downtown Vancouver. And then, of course, the Space Needle.
That's the one I know.
Yeah,
that's what I thought you were going to ask me about Space Needle. I was like, I don't know much about that. But
oh, my goodness. Not a good start at all. All right. So the Space Needle was built in 1962. It was built for the World Fair.
Okay.
Now, in the 1950s... And I've done some research. I should let people know. I've done a little bit of research to set up this story because we don't have any guests coming in. So
right, you're the expert today.
Yeah, loosely use that term loosely. So what I'm going to tell you, I've really pulled from old newspaper articles in the archives of the Daily Colonist.
Nice.
And really, the story I'm going to go through what people at that time read in the newspaper of the day.
I love that.
Yeah.
So so the Space Needle was built in 62, and Victoria is proposing this 5 years later in 67?
So the Space Needle was built in 62, but in the 1950s, there was this movement to build towers taller all over the world.
Oh, okay.
And I think one of the things that drove that was the evolution of TV and broadcasting. They wanted their satellite dishes higher up. Yeah. Get them as high up as possible. Okay. So in the 50s, construction was getting bigger and better. They were finding new ways to build towers.
Like human marvels, just making towers bigger.
And then 1962, we had the Space Needle for the World Fair. Mm-hmm. 4 years later, Canada's preparing for its centennial of Confederation, 100 years. So that's kind of the scenario that we're in. as we tell this story.
I like it.
So March 16th, 1966, on the front page of the Daily Colonist, there was the first article I can find of this pitch, and it was for a 300-foot observation needle. It would be about twice as high as Captain Vancouver, and Captain Vancouver, his statue's on the top of the Legislature. Everyone's seen it.
Oh,
in
yes,
gold.
yes.
I'll tell you a little side note, funny story about Captain Vancouver. I was told a while back that his feet were both, I can't remember if they were right feet or left feet, but that his statue, when they built it, they only had the mold for one of the feet, either left or right.
You're talking about the statue on the top of the middle dome of the Legislature here in Victoria.
Many years ago, I actually looked into this and tried to get confirmation from folks down at the Legislature if this was true or not. There's shots of drones up there, and I've tried to look. It doesn't look like it's true. It looks like his feet are both pointing the right way.
Okay.
But I just thought that was an interesting
tidbit.
Wasn't even going to bring that up, but here we are. So anyway, the Space Needle, not Space Needle, the Observation Needle, as they called it, was going to be twice as high as Captain Vancouver.
Wow, okay.
Okay. They wanted it to be finished and built for 1967. The other thing, too, was tourism was becoming huge in the city. I mean, people realized in the 50s and 60s that was one of the big draws for Victoria. Vancouver was still much bigger, as it always has been compared to Victoria. Right. Actually, not always, but at this point in time, it was bigger than Victoria.
Right.
So people were realizing tourism's how Victoria is going to make some money.
Right.
And so this was going to be a celebration for 100 years of the country and a tourist draw.
Welcoming people into Victoria, getting them here.
It would be half the height of the Space Needle. That gives you some context. But still, at 300 feet, and in later articles, they actually have it up to, I think, 350 feet.
That's like towering over Victoria,
It's very high. Like, I think it might be comparable to Mount Ptolemy, but you would be able to see everything.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
Now, you're wondering, probably, where would it go? Where would it be located?
Mm-hmm. I am wondering.
It was going to go on, originally, 4 lots on Belleville Street between Pendray and Oswego. So down at Belleville, where the Coho and Clipper terminal is.
Yes.
You know the block where Santiago's is? We've talked about Santiago's on this podcast.
Yep.
It's the same sort of area where the Pendray Inn Tea House is.
Yep.
So I guess there were 4 lots right in that area that the city held in trust.
Okay, just past the ledge kind of there, right?
Just down from the Legislature.
Yeah.
And that is initially where they wanted to put this big tower.
Okay.
They also, and I looked up, and if you want to Google this, it's kind of neat to see. It's called 1,000 Island Towers. I think it used to be called Hill Island Skydeck. It's in the Thousand Islands area of the St. Lawrence River. I've never been there, but that also gives you a good indication of what this thing looks like.
Ooh.
I will also put photos of the initial proposal up on our Instagram page. So if you're listening to this and you want to get an idea and go, or maybe you're thinking, you guys are nuts, this never happened. There's actual drawings and renderings of what it would look like.
That's Instagram, MicCHEK podcast, right?
Yes. Skydeck International Limited was the company that was behind this. They were out of Toronto and Ottawa. They were going to be in charge of design and construction of the whole thing.
Cool.
This is interesting because I have read, and I actually read this in Dorothy Mindenhall's book, Unbuilt Victoria, which we've talked about before.
Yeah, Dorothy's book.
Well, she says in this book, and Dorothy's a wonderful lady, and I hope I don't have this wrong, but she says it was going to be made out of concrete and steel.
The tower was?
Yeah, the tower.
Okay.
But in articles that I found, that's not correct. Apparently, it was going to be built out of aluminum. And aluminum at the time, they said, and doesn't really... You know, and I don't know anything about engineering or
right, me either.
these materials, but they thought it was as strong as conventional steel and concrete, and that it would offer better resistance to wind, and it would stand up better to sun corrosion over time.
Oh, right. Well, yeah, because it would be in ocean, salt spray, all sun, all that stuff.
This is where we get some more very fascinating details about this thing.
Okay, I love it.
So aluminum, big tower, 320 to 350 feet. Okay. Around the base, they wanted to have ponds, which would have seals and other marine life.
What? Seals in the ponds below the tower?
Yes. So they'd have seals and fish in these big ponds, and they also wanted to have an underwater viewing area. So you could go underground, look at the seals and the fish before you go up the tower. I don't know when the underwater sea gardens, I mean, I can look it up when it opened, but it closed. It was a very popular attraction.
Yep.
And I think we need to think about some of those things that have gone. The Wax Museum, the underwater sea gardens, all of these tourist attractions. That's what they are. Get people in. It feels like we don't have as many of those in the city anymore. So when I say I think this would have been a great idea, I still think it would have been. It's a good idea today. I mean, a lot of cities have these great lookout points downtown. We've got a beautiful city. Why not get people up so they can see it? So at the base, big pool, seals, marine life.
Structurally unsound, no? Put a giant tower on top of like a pool of seals and stuff? I don't know.
Come on. I mean, it's 2022. I think we'd be okay. We'd figure it out. At the top, there would be 2 circular decks. The lower one would be enclosed. It would have a souvenir shop and a coffee shop. The upper one would be the observation area, and there would be 1 elevator. It would be able to go 500 feet in 1 minute. This was the pitch.
Wow.
So probably take you 30, 45 seconds to get up.
Okay.
They thought it could carry 600 people in an hour.
Whoa.
And studies at the time showed that they thought they'd pull in 500,000 people a year.
Okay.
And the price tag, I haven't told you the price tag, have I?
No, not
yet. The price tag, I think.
And this is the price in the year, right?
$450,000 today. Back then, $450,000. Okay. So hold on a second. Let me just do the math. $450,000 inflation, 1966. That should give me something. Hold on. Here we go. That would be $4 million today. So I was expecting a bigger figure.
I was definitely expecting more.
And this is, who knows if this is right.
It's probably because they're building out of aluminum and not.
Could be. Okay, so that was the first time many people in the city heard about this plan.
Okay.
Few things stand out to me just from the initial article.
Yeah.
It's March of 1966. They want this thing built for July 1967.
1 year later, essentially.
Basically. So the timeline is wild.
Wow.
Maybe they just moved a lot faster back then. I don't know. But to get this thing erected in 1 year.
That seems
And actually, they did say, I remember reading that they thought the entire thing would take 11 months, I think, to construct. Wow. So there you go. So that was in March. 2 months later, another article surfaces, okay? They're looking for someone to build this thing, okay? Tenders are going out for this 325 Skydeck Space Needle. What's interesting in the second piece is that the location had changed from Montreal Street. Sorry, it had changed from the lot that I was talking about earlier off Belleville.
Right next to the Legislature.
Right, where Santiago's and the Pendray Suite Inns. It had actually moved down to off of Montreal Street. So Montreal Street is, if you're going down Belleville and it curves around down by Fisherman's Wharf, Montreal Street is kind of where the Laurel Point Inn is.
Oh, okay, so a little bit further down now.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they had moved after council had looked at it, they decided to move the location to just by the water off Montreal Street. Okay. The city didn't want it so close to the Legislature. It thought it would, quote, mar the inner harbor.
I kind of was wondering that to myself. That seems very close to the Legislature for something that tall to just dwarf the government building.
The one thing that I thought of, though, was sort of all the aviation traffic down there. We've got a lot of seaplanes.
Yeah. This is my ignorance talking, but were there seaplanes? Like, was that kind of stuff happening down there at the time? Like the aviation part of it?
Yeah, there for sure. I don't know. For sure there were planes, but
but like down in the inner harbor of Victoria.
I'm not sure. But I mean, anything that high in the sky,
it's going to cause a problem for something like
that. So City Council in June of '66, City Council had approved it in principle. It was a done deal. A few of the details had been tinkered with. So now there would also be a tea room up top. Before it was a coffee shop and a souvenir shop, and then that would be one level, and the next level would be the observation deck. I should also mention, this is one thing that I didn't mention, the where was it? The upper deck, the upper ring would be an open-sided observation area.
No windows or anything?
So
just
apparently
like open?
there would be some of it that would be open concept, which I think is awesome.
Oh, my God.
That is awesome.
The wind up there and everything, the rain whipping in? Holy moly.
So there would be a tea room up top, and then down below, they were going to actually connect it to a restaurant, the Net Loft Restaurant. It was at 640 Montreal Street.
Okay.
I haven't found any photos of this restaurant, but I guess there was a restaurant there.
So the restaurant did exist?
Yes.
Okay.
They were going to actually tie in the Skydeck with the Net Left restaurant, and they would have a cocktail lounge and restaurant sort of at the bottom with the Net Loft. So it would kind of be tied in. You'd have this restaurant.
Right.
You'd have this marine life pool. You'd have the elevator that would take you up. There'd be a tea room and an open concept observation deck.
Wow.
Lot going on.
Just kind of get some drinks before you take the elevator up, waiting in line or whatever.
One little interesting tidbit is the mayor of the time, Elf. I don't know if it's Toon or Tooney, but Elf Toon, I'm going to go with.
Okay.
He wanted more consultation, said, no, we got to, talk about this some more. And a couple of the other council members, aldermen, they said, no, we've been talking about this way too long. We got to get going on.
We need this thing next year. Let's go.
Yeah. So there was a little bit of debate about should we actually proceed with this thing.
Okay.
Do you have any questions? I want to get your thoughts. What do you think of this idea?
I think you're right. Like if there are planes flying around down there, that just seems like a dangerous situation. But just from like having something in Victoria where you could go up, like the geography here is so unique and interesting with right there where you could see the ocean on one side, see the harbor on the other side, see the mountains in the distance. Like it just seems like a cool place to put something like that.
I want you to come at it from a different angle. I want you to put on your family man father hat.
Okay. Well, yes, absolutely.
Yeah. I already have that on, Joe.
Right.
I wear that hat all the time. Don't remind me.
Sorry. Go ahead.
So don't you think, though, that this city, the city of Victoria right now, needs more things like this?
Totally. Absolutely.
I do think that we're lacking in things to do as a family. I mean, we have so much natural beauty and things to do outside. I look at the Malahat Skywalk, for example.
I've taken the family there a couple of times.
And did they have a good time?
We had a great time.
So
love it.
I still haven't been to the Malahat Skywalk.
No?
But that to me is similar to what we're talking about here.
Yes.
I think the Malahat Skywalk, from everything I've seen and read, is doing quite well.
Yeah, it's a unique experience. It's
right.
an interesting way to see.
Right.
We have this nature around us, and yes, it's beautiful, but when you see it from this different perspective and go up and you do the experience of it, and that is something worth noting.
The other thing, too, is our city is pretty from the water looking in.
Yeah.
I mean, I would argue our city's pretty everywhere, but if you want a good snapshot of look at the city of Victoria.
Yep.
You can only really do that. I mean, you could do that from the Songhees Walkway over in Vic West. Mm-hmm. There's areas there. Mm-hmm. But again, you're looking at the city.
Yeah.
So why not, leverage that and build some sort of structure like this where you can get a 360-degree view of how lucky we are to live here. Every time I take a Harbour Air or a Helijet, and I'm not the only one, everyone is amazed at the beauty of the city.
Just the views.
But you got to get up.
Yeah.
So that's why I think this is very special. And I think the height that they were proposing is reasonable. It's half the height of the Skydeck. The Vancouver Lookout Tower, the one, it's not called that. What did I call it again? I called it the Vancouver Lookout, It's 553 feet. Okay?
Okay.
And it really, yes, it's one of the taller buildings in Vancouver right now, but there's taller ones.
Right.
So this is not obnoxiously tall.
We're proposing 300 something here?
Yeah, about 350.
Okay,
I think in the end.
Yeah.
I still think it's a great idea.
When you did a dog walking thing and we talked about High Rock Park, like even going to High Rock Park in Esquimalt, where you get those 360-degree views of, you can see Victoria, you can see the West Shore, you can see everything, you can see the mountains. Like that to me is something, we've gone there several times after that for that experience of being able to see that. Mm-hmm. If that was a tower in the inner harbor, I can't even imagine how great that would be and how often I'd want to be in there doing that.
I'm looking up right now. I want to know the height of High Rock Park in Esquimalt. Somebody must know.
Yeah.
Just because, no, it can't be. High Rock Park, 71 meters. Yeah, maybe that's right. So 71 meters. Can you do the math there, Kyle? 71 meters. I got it. 7 millimeters. So 230 feet.
Okay. So another 100 feet from High Rock Park.
But think about the lookout you have there.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're wondering, well, what happened, Joe? Where did this go? And unfortunately, the ending of the story isn't as great as the beginning. Because
spoiler alert.
Really, this project, like many, outlandish, over-the-top proposals, it just fizzled. One of the things that the group who was presenting this, one of the things they said was it was going to be built entirely by private money. No government grants, which I find a little bizarre because, look back to the 150th celebration of this country.
Right.
There were grants, left, right. You could
threw money everywhere.
You get a grant. You get a grant. So I wonder if that was a mistake. Maybe they should have looked to the federal government for a little bit of money to help build this thing and promote Victoria, the capital city of the province.
Yep.
Anyway, it essentially just fizzled. And if you look in the archives, I didn't even find a closing piece that announced it is a done deal.
Do you think that has to do with the timeline being so tight and just like, well, that's not going to happen?
Maybe. Or maybe it was some, really excited journalists that picked up a story that really wasn't going anywhere. You know what I mean?
I don't know who could be doing something like that.
What? Come on. It's because I like big ideas.
Yeah.
I like big ideas.
So you're saying maybe there was a journalist back then that liked big
I don't
ideas.
know. I don't know. But that, in a nutshell, folks, is the story of the Victoria Skydeck proposal that sounded great and went nowhere. And I've wanted to talk about that for a little while. It's hard to find people to talk about these things from so long ago, but I think you can walk away from this episode at least with an understanding of what was proposed, the details of it, why it didn't work out. There just wasn't enough money for it, and perhaps not enough interest. And again, if you want to see some of the pictures of this thing, we've got a few of them.
Yeah.
You can go on to our Instagram page, MicCHEK Podcast, and take a look. So anything you want to add before we go here, Kyle?
Thank you for doing the research and becoming our expert on the Victoria Skydeck.